Hey friend, Sean from Draft Therapy here, and on today's review for you, it's going to be 3 times the fun. Deleterious is a 14.6% barrel-aged Imperial Stout from Odd Side Ales in Grand Haven, Michigan. Way back in late 2019, I took a look at the original Deleterious from Odd Side Ales, and I enjoyed the duality of flavor that I got out of it. And you might ask what that means. Well, what that means is I got a lot of barrel characteristic as it warmed. When it was cooler, I got more of a chocolate flavor, and I just liked having that kind of conflicting or those difference of taste. So you might think, if you've already recorded a review on this one, why are you making another one? Well, this time I've got a couple Deleterious variants to back them all up. So let's take a look at what's different on these labels and we'll get it into a glass. But first, I'd like to thank my executive producers, Ryan Berry, Eric Latowski, Brian Kramer, Zach, and Cam Freeman for helping to bring this review to you today. If you'd like to become an executive producer, help out the channel, or maybe just buy me a beer, take a look at my Patreon at patreon.com/draft_therapy, where you can get early access to these videos, exclusive patron-only live streams, and a few other special perks available only to patrons. So let's take a look at the label. So if we set these variants aside, we'll get to those in a second. But the thing that I noticed just right off the bat is that the original Deleterious was a 13% Imperial Stout, bourbon barrel-aged Imperial Stout. This is now a 14.6, but we'll get to that. So looking at the label, the can is a matte black can with a matte black wrap. It says Odd Side on the top with the 3 hop cones, which is their logo. It has a hooded, robed, skulled character, and it says Deleterious on the front, Imperial Stout aged in bourbon barrels. If we turn it to the back, it's all these tombstones and whatnot, a really dark label design here. It says Deleterious, rich dark chocolate and raisin-like aromas showcase this bourbon barrel-aged Imperial Stout, roasty sweet and subtle notes of oak and a warming finish, 14.6% alcohol by volume. Then if we turn a little bit more, it says brewed and canned by Odd Side Ales in Grand Haven, Michigan, and then their website, oddsideales.com, and all their social media icons. This was manufactured on January 11th, 2021. So let's set this one to the side. I'm just going to quickly go over these other ones. They're really very similar. The only difference is the vanilla one says vanilla on the bottom in red. It says Imperial Stout aged in bourbon barrels with vanilla. And then the double oaked is again the same. It has a brown greenish kind of double oaked font. It says Imperial Stout aged in bourbon barrels and aged again over oak spirals. And on the back of the double oaked, it says aged in bourbon barrels, then aged again on medium toasted oak. Aromas of dark chocolate and raisin showcase this Imperial Stout. Roasty sweet with expressive notes of oak and a warming finish, again 14.6%. And then the vanilla, the difference says aromas of vanilla. Rich dark chocolate and raisin showcase this Imperial Stout, aged in bourbon barrels with whole vanilla beans. Roasty sweet with delicate vanilla and subtle notes of oak lead into a smooth, warming finish, again 14.6%. So, as you can only do with 3 beers that are very similar to each other, you have to use 3 glasses that are very similar to each other. And tomorrow might be a little bit rough, let's put it that way, because these are all 14.6% Imperial bourbon barrel-aged Imperial Stouts. And we're going to go down the line, and it's been a while since I've done a bit of a head-to-head. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour each of these, smell it, obviously pour it, smell it again, and then I'm going to just pick one, my favorite out of these, and that's, generally how I do this. So we're going to start with the original Deleterious, which I had to tell myself how to say about 15 times because I want to say it says Deleterious, but it's Deleterious. So let's go ahead and crack it. And were these all? These were all canned. This one was canned on February 22nd. That's the double oaked, and the vanilla was on January 12th. So we have January 12th on these two, on the end, 11th and 12th, and then in February, so that makes me think there were 2 different runs, and I believe this was initially like a taproom only release, but this did make it to store shelves. I didn't go to Grand Haven to pick these up, so I did find them on local shelves. So, Deleterious, the original. Let's crack it. We're going to put a nose on the can, like one does. Get a really big boozy character right off the bat. Get a lot of dark fruit aroma. I would say, they say raisin on the back. I would say raisin falls into that dark fruit. And then we're going to go ahead and pour it. So we're going to look at the overhead as the pour goes down. Very dark coming out of the can. Getting a little bit more aggressive on that pour. See if we can churn up some head here. very dark. I mean, like oil consistency, and it had a bit of a thickness pouring out too. So we're going to let that sit for a second. We have about a finger and a half of head. This is a very dark, I would say that is a coffee colored head. It's very dark, caramel to very dark, to coffee colored, and lots of popping bubbles, a lot of activity, which is always nice to see. If we hold it up to the light here, very dark. Yeah, nothing doing, not seeing through that at all. Putting a nose on the glass. Getting much more of a bourbon characteristic than I was getting out of the can itself. It also comes, that dark fruit kind of kicks up a little bit sweeter. It has a little bit of a, there is a little bit of an oaky quality to it, but not like super high and overpowering. So we're going to set Deleterious, the original, over here to the side. I am most intrigued by the vanilla, but I'm going to open the double oaked next. And again, we're going to put a nose on the can because this is a process. We don't just do one and not do for the others. We want to treat everybody fairly. We're going to move this one over, and it's just going to be slightly on the edge of the frame. So let's go ahead and, oh, nose on the glass, on the can here. It does smell different, actually. Less pronounced. That dark fruit aroma is less pronounced, and it does actually have a bit of a very slight kind of woodier, oakier aroma, but there's not a whole lot. Surprisingly, there's not a lot of aroma coming out of the can. Whoa, so we're going to go ahead and pour this. Consistency, it's a little bit, maybe a little bit on the lighter side, but it is very similar. We're going to get a little bit more aggressive, pour it right down the center there. We had about a finger and a half on the original. On this one, about a finger and a half, about the same. The head is maybe a slightly, like a hair darker on the darker side. Head, though, the bubbles, all the stuff, the head visually looks very similar. The color is a little bit darker, maybe a little bit more on the, you know, it leans a little bit more towards like a purplish kind of dark brown coffee. And let's go ahead and give it a sniff here. I am getting more of an aroma than I was getting out of the can. It is a very, like, again, a lot more oak aroma, more of a woodsy kind of aroma. Slightly smelling the bourbon kind of barrel characteristic in there. And I'm going to set this to the side. I'm going to set the cans behind now. And then we're going to move on to vanilla. We're going to crack the vanilla. I feel like I need to move these again. So I'm just going to move them kind of out of on the edge of the frame there. Crack this, put a nose on it. Deleterious, vanilla. Okay, so it does have a sweeter aroma, but I am picking up more on the bourbon than I got on the double oak. Again, not a whole bursting aroma. The biggest one has been the original so far, so let's go ahead and pour this. And the color is actually a little bit thicker. I'm not seeing through this as much. It looks like straight up oil initially being poured out of the can here. And again, about a finger and a half worth of head. The head color is about the same. They've all been very similar. I feel like I'm kind of looking at this one and then looking at these as the heads kind of died down a little bit. And the color has changed a little bit as it's died down a little bit. I'm sure when this one dies down a little bit, it will be the same color. But they've all been very kind of similar in that same kind of color family, in that coffee colored head family. Let's go ahead and hold it up to the light, which I didn't do on the double oaked, I just realized. But hey, guess what? I'm not seeing through it. Super dark, very black. Not even seeing much of a color through the bulb on the bottom of this glass. But let's put a nose on the glass. I'm getting the bourbon, big bourbon kind of characteristic on this one again, like I did on the original. And not really much of a difference from the original. So actually, let's get the original here. I'm going to continue to keep them in the same order. So actually, the original has more of a kind of, it definitely not kind of, it has more of a dark fruit aroma. And I think that the vanilla has more of a bourbon kind of characteristic to it. So dark fruit, bourbon, kind of sweeter smelling. And then, of course, the double oaked, we're just going to set it to the side. So I'll put a little marker here. Vanilla, double oaked, original. So we're going to go down the line, and I'm going to try the original first. I'll tell you my thoughts on it, then we'll move on to the next one. So original. Wow, so good. That mouthfeel is on the heavier side. It's getting really on the thicker side, getting to the borderline syrupy side. It's not actually as syrupy as I at 14.6%. I would think it would be maybe a little bit more syrupy, but the mouthfeel is a really nice mouthfeel. It's just a tad under that syrupy end. If we're talking about the flavor, big bourbon notes. Big time bourbon, very boozy, has a bit of a boozy bourbon burn, if you will, on the swallow. But so that's really the upfront characteristic, is big time bourbon flavor. A lot of vanilla, getting a bit of a kind of marshmallow almost kind of flavor in there, reminiscent of a marshmallow. As it goes down, it's very sweet chocolate. It's not dark chocolate. I think on the very tail end, on the finish, now talking and all the kind of everything kind of drying up in my mouth, for lack of a better term, it's starting to get more of a bitter baker's chocolate flavor. And I'm just sipping on this, but it's very sweet up front. A lot of chocolate notes, very chocolatey, lots of bourbon, very bourbony, so to speak. So we're going to move on to the double oaked. And I have to say, if you look at the head on the original versus the head on these two, I know it was probably a minute or so between pours on each of these. That head is still just kicking. It is still sitting there. It's like wavy on the top on this one, maybe not so much on here. And it might just be the way the light's hitting it, but regardless. Yeah, just big time oaky aroma, very woodsy, earthy kind of aroma. So let's go ahead and try it out and see what the difference is in taste, shall we? The bourbon on this is there. Let's talk about mouthfeel. So mouthfeel is actually maybe, it's a tad thicker, a tad more syrupy, a tad softer than the original. The flavor, the bourbon is in there. It's still boozy, but it's like it's a hidden booziness. It's not so boozy. This one, the original, I feel like is just in your face kind of boozy bourbon, has a bourbon bite to it. This one has that just really solid oak, as it's double oaked, right? So you would expect that it's going to have a lot of oak, but it's almost a different beer because the bourbon characteristic of the original is so strong and it's such a big upfront presence that when you get all the sweetness and all the flavors like that, but you get that punch of oak rather than that punch of bourbon, and the bourbon's still in there, but the oak is so definitely a strong flavor characteristic in this beer that it almost seems like they're different beers. But tasting them obviously back to back, if I tasted them in between, you know, drank the full glass of this and moved on to this one, I might think like, wow, those are really similar, but trying them side by side like this, they are very different. I have to say though, I don't know, while they taste very different and they taste like different beers, I don't know if I'm a fan of how much oak is in this one. I'm just not really a big kind of oak flavor fan. I like when it adds a bit to it, but this is like, wow, a lot of oak. I mean, it's double oaked. You'd expect that it's going to be very oaky. And with that being said, let's move on to the vanilla. So, yeah, again, this head's really staying on. Even the double oaked, after drinking it, disturbing it, you know, breaking the plane of its existence, it is still has a nice head on it. This one still has about a half a finger. So, and it's really, it looks like chocolate milk almost at this point, how fine the head is on that. So let's go ahead and try this one out. Cheers. Okay, so this one feels almost more smooth than the double oak. The double oaked is very smooth. I feel like the Deleterious, the regular one, is, you know, has a bit of that boozy characteristic, right? And I said the mouthfeel is a little bit borderline thick. This one just feels the smoothest. The mouthfeel itself feels the smoothest. Let's talk about the taste. So I have to say, the taste on this one is, it's funny. It's like the double oaked had that oaky characteristic and the bourbon was a little bit more subdued. It's sneaky, sneaky boozy. Like I don't get a burn on this one. I didn't get a burn on that one. This one tastes like the regular Deleterious, but smoother with less bourbon, and has a little bit more sweetness to it. It's like the double oaked without the oak, if that makes sense. So it's like you took all the characteristics that I really liked about the double oak minus the oak, because the oak was the part that I'm kind of like, maybe a little bit borderline too much. This one, the vanilla is like the double oaked, but just without the oak. It's smoother. It has a better mouthfeel. I think the bourbon just kind of it's much better woven into the fabric of the flavor. So preliminarily, I'm going to give it to vanilla, but it wouldn't be complete. I'm going to set all these cans over here. So what we got here is we've got Deleterious, the original, the double oaked, and the vanilla. Let's taste those just like how these cans are set up. Okay, very exactly the same order. So, original. Still very strong bourbon, a little bit of an oak flavor, a little bit of vanilla. The sweetness is almost a little bit over the edge, and it's that bourbon is enhancing, the bourbon flavor is enhancing that sweetness, so it's almost too sweet. It's almost like a marshmallowy kind of vanilla at this point. Double oaked. Less boozy, very woodsy, very oaky, a lot of oak bite, a sharp oak bite to it. It's double oaked. You expect that it's going to be a big oak characteristic, and now we have vanilla. Much like the double oaked, it's a little bit less bourbon, a little bit less boozy. Still says 14.6 on the can. Have to expect that it's 14.6%. But I think that for my choice, if I had to go with all three of these, I think that they all serve a bit of a different audience. And I think that's a good thing too. I think, well, let's go with number one. So my number one pick would be the vanilla. My number two pick would be the double oak. My number three pick out of the three would be the original. If I had to drink only one of them, I would only pick the vanilla. I feel like these serve different audiences, okay? So I feel like the regular version is more for the bourbon kind of fan that occasionally drinks a beer and would like to try an Imperial Stout that has a lot of characteristics. They're going to taste the bourbon in it. They're going to get that sweetness. They're going to get almost too much vanilla, right? Which is almost counterintuitive considering this one's called vanilla and it's not as vanilla as this one. But I think, again, that the bourbon characteristic really plays into the sweetness of the vanilla and makes it almost taste like a marshmallowy kind of flavor. I think that if you're a big oak fan, like you like to drink bourbon barrel-aged stouts or bourbon barrel-aged beers and you appreciate tasting that oak flavor, double oaked is chock full of oak. And so you're going to taste that. And that's who I think this beer is for. It's for a fan. It's someone who's a fan of getting that oaky flavor in their barrel-aged anything, any beer. And then I think the vanilla is kind of like, it's the Imperial Stout lover that likes bourbon barrel-aged stouts, but sometimes the bourbon barrel-aged stouts can be a little bit too boozy. You want a little bit of a sweetness to it. You have a little bit of a sweet tooth. You want some of that. You want a thicker bourbon barrel-aged Imperial Stout, but you're not going to get so much of that boozy bourbon characteristic. So to break it down to the, too long didn't listen or didn't watch, it's going to be number one for me is going to be vanilla, then double oaked, then the original. I think this is more for the bourbon aficionado, the bourbon appreciator. This one's going to be more for the person that likes oak flavoring in their bourbon barrel aged, insert your favorite style here. And I think this one is more of the accessible beer for someone who dabbles in barrel-aged stouts, bourbon barrel-aged Imperial Stouts every once in a while, wants a nice smooth flavor, has a little bit of sweetness, but has a little bit, it's the best of both worlds in my opinion. All right, friends, that's been Deleterious from Odd Side Ales. Have you had any of these bourbon barrel-aged stouts or the variants yet? Which one do you pick? Do you agree with what I said? And if you did try it, what did you think? Let me know in the comments down below while you're down there. If you like beer, you might want to subscribe and click that bell because I'm here talking about beer twice a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays. It's all for free for viewers just like you. and you might miss your newest favorite if you're not subscribed and getting those notifications. So what are you waiting for? Subscribe, get those notifications when you see the new video come up, watch it. So until next time, I'm Sean from Draft Therapy. Thanks for stopping by. Remember, drink craft beer, support your local breweries wherever they are, and most importantly, don't forget to treat yourself to a little draft therapy. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you next time. Cheers.